breaking down the Vikings from the perspective of a former NFL General Manager of the Year. It's Jeff Diamond's Purple Weekly, presented by your select Minnesota Buick GMC dealership.
Welcome to Jeff Diamond's Purple Report, brought to you today and every Monday during the season by your select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers on 1500 ESPN and available 24/7 on YouTube via links from 1500 ESPN and Score North websites. I'm Jeff Diamond, former Vikings GM, former Tennessee Titans president. I was GM of that famous 1998 Vikings team that went 15-1 and should have gone to the Super Bowl. Didn't quite make it. Our producer is AJ Fredrickson, does a great job. And hello, AJ. And coming off an too exciting, shall we say, victory yesterday for the Vikings over the Saints in London. And talking about London as we get going, and it looked like a great atmosphere in London yesterday at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, North London. I was part of the very first international trip to London by the NFL with the Vikings. We played the then St. Louis Cardinals in a preseason game at Wembley Stadium back in 1983. Very challenging experience.
I can only imagine.
In my career, yes, indeed. But we did win the game, and meanwhile, the Vikings have won 3 straight regular season games in London, including, of course, yesterday's great game. Now, the good news coming out of the game, the Vikings are 3-1, leading the NFC North after beating that banged-up Saints team, but they were plenty feisty in the game. And as I always told our players and coaches, all that really matters is getting the W. And we know the Vikings had plenty of chances to put this game away, as Coach O'Connell and the players talked about after the game. And so they weren't thrilled with how it all transpired. But to get the win, have that 8-hour flight back with a win under your belt, certainly had to feel good. But again, for the second straight week, came down to the end, and the Vikings needed that late rally against an opponent that probably is not among the NFL's elite teams, at least through 4 weeks. But it is the NFL. Things rarely go perfectly, and that was certainly the case yesterday for the Vikings, who scored on 6 of their last 7 possessions, but 5 of those were field goals by Greg Joseph, including the 47-yard game winner, and we'll hear that highlight soon. But it was a good start for the Vikings yesterday, and certainly after the slow starts the last couple of weeks against Philadelphia and Detroit was welcomed by the coaches and players to get off to that good start. Had a great opening drive that culminated in Alexander Madison's touchdown on a 15-yard screen pass.
That's it. 3rd and goal. They set it up for Madison. Breaks 2 tackles and weaves into the end zone. Brilliant for Alexander Madison. And the Vikings are on the board.
And that's Kevin Kugler and Mark Sanchez on NFL Network with our highlights today. So the Vikings got off to the early lead and had great momentum, had a sack by Zadarius Smith on the first Saints series. And we know the Saints were banged up going into the game with Andy Dalton starting in place of Jameis Winston, missing their star receiver Michael Thomas, running back Alvin Kamara, and a Pro Bowl guard, Andrus Peat. So the Saints were undermanned, but certainly a very game team. And we know there's a great rivalry between these teams, even if they're not in the same division. There is a strong rivalry, and a couple of great playoff wins the Vikings have had in recent years, the Minneapolis Miracle, and then, of course, in 2019, the overtime win down in New Orleans when the Vikings upset the Saints. And then a couple of years ago, that 52-33 game that stuck in Mike Zimmer's craw when Kamara scored 6 touchdowns and Sean Payton kind of ran up the score on Zim and the Vikings at that time. But the Vikings' early momentum in this game, unfortunately, was waylaid when Lewis Seen, the first-round pick, had just a gruesome injury, the fracture to his lower leg, and he had surgery, stayed over in London, and very unfortunate to have that injury to an up-and-coming player, was a very good player on special teams, and as he was learning the defense, probably eventually would have been a starter at some point this season. Cam Bynum, the current starter safety, has been okay, but not making enough impact plays, shall we say, including yesterday on the last Saints drive when they completed the long pass to Chris Olave that set up Lutz for that last field goal try. So very disappointing to have that injury to the scene. And I think a lot of things that happened yesterday, Kirk Cousins, an up and down game, and had the interception that followed that injury to scene. And I think that was a big turning point in the game when the Vikings had that early lead and looked like they were going down to score again. And certainly that kind of waylaid the momentum at that point in time.
And Jeff, coming from your experience, when you have a guy like that have that type of injury on the field that early in the game, what does it do to maybe the sidelines and maybe the coaching staff morale? What's the message that you expect there to be to rebound, and you have to go out and you have to finish the game after watching a guy that you've been in the trenches with through the preseason, through the first couple weeks of the season, and you see that happen. He gets carted off in a very gruesome injury that was very unfortunate. But how do you go back? Like, what's the message like to the rest of the team to get back out there and actually finish the game and get the win?
Yeah, I think that's a real challenge for the head coach, in particular for Kevin O'Connell, to get the players refocused, because it's just very difficult to see that happen to one of your brothers on the field, and just with that type of injury where they know it's a serious injury, where the cart's out there and they have the air cast on the leg, and so it's just really difficult. And obviously there was a little bit of an effect on the Vikings and probably to a certain extent on the Saints too, because they were trying to give Scene some kudos and give him some reinforcement that, hey, it'll be okay in the final analysis, but definitely an early issue in that game, and that was tough. And so I think as the game went on, we certainly saw a lot of back and forth in this game, and the difficulty the Vikings had with blowing opportunities. And I think one in particular, there were a couple of plays. Dalvin Tomlinson had a strip sack that was a big play recovered by Harrison Phillips.
Some points before halftime because they're getting the ball coming out of the third quarter.
And Dalton in trouble. Down he goes. Dalvin Tomlinson there, and the ball came out. The ball came out at the end of the play, and the Vikings recover it with Harrison Phillips.
Here's Andy Dalton right here, boom. And they just ripped it out. I don't think that knee was down. Oh, yeah, ball's out. Oh.
And so that was a big play. But again, the Vikings have a good field position, can only get a field goal out of that particular drive. And then later on in the game, there was another big turnover on a punt return that Chris Boyd made a terrific play, knocked the ball out and recovered the fumble.
First 3 and out of the day for the Vikings offense. Hardy at the 42. Nice little jump stop. Got him to the 45. And then the ball pops out. The ball loosed out at the 44. He was trying to get extra yardage, and it's recovered by Minnesota. Scooped up by Chris Boyd.
And again, can't quite convert that into a touchdown. And so, again, another field goal at that stage. And the Vikings are in a situation where they have a 9-point lead at one point, but then the Saints are able to, on their drives, score touchdowns. We're able to run the ball fairly effectively for most of the day. Latavius Murray, former Viking, had a really good day on the ground, had 57 yards on 11 carries, a 5.2-yard average. Again, the Vikings having issues in run defense, and we know that Taysom Hill has been a problem for the Vikings historically.
Absolutely.
He's a terrific player, and I think the Saints made a mistake by not utilizing him more with the Wildcat.
I was surprised how long it took them to interpret him into the offense, because it seemed like it almost was a full quarter that went by before we saw our first flash of him. So Vikings might have gotten away with a little something there.
Yeah, exactly right. And so I think that was a key too. So as it all unfolded, the positives from the game, Justin Jefferson with a big bounce back game after a couple of difficult weeks facing single coverage and double coverage, and from some really good corners in Darius Slay and Jeff Okudah of Detroit, Slay from Philadelphia. And so the Saints tried basically the same format with Marcus Lattimore, a Pro Bowl corner, on Jefferson. But this particular day, they were able to shake JJ loose, and a particular big play towards the end of the game, as we know. But before we got to that point, There was an exciting play on special teams. Special teams have been a terrific part of the season for the Vikings. Great kick coverage, and Kane Wong-Wu broke through with some kickoff returns in this particular game. Rager had a long punt return, so some good stuff in the return game. But the kick cover units have been great all year. And as we talked about, the Chris Boyd play in that particular play. So some good stuff going on at that point. But another very exciting play. And one thing we got to say about this game, AJ, the Vikings and the Saints put on a good show for the folks over in England.
Oh, absolutely.
And for the international audience, because it was a very exciting game, more exciting than it needed to be, as we said. But it was a fun game for the fans. Lots of kicks, as Eric Kendrick said. They loved the kicks over there. And so it was very exciting, down to the wire, as we know. And then the Vikings pulled the old rabbit out of the hat. Matt Daniels, the special teams coordinator, made the call, got Kevin O'Connell to go along with the fake punt.
Oh, it's a fake to the air. Open, first down. Ryan Wright finding Jalen Naylor. His first career catch, and what a time for it. Vikings with the fake and the conversion.
My favorite thing about that highlight is when I'm going to grab it, they say Ryan Wright shows shades of what quarterback on the Vikings do you think they compared him to? Sean Mannion.
Wow. Oh, wow. Yeah, because his pass was short, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he actually is a former high school quarterback, too.
Yeah.
So they had been working on that play for a long time. That was late in the third quarter. But again, the Vikings had some penalty issues. Brian O'Neill, a false start. He had a couple in this game. Johnny Munt missed a block on Cam Jordan, and they end up having to kick another field goal, 46-yarder by Greg Joseph. And at that point, they're up 19-14, but starting to lose the battle in the trenches. And I think one of the issues, they put in some of their backup guys at that point, and Ross Blacklock, one of the guys, got kind of pushed around out there. He's the guy that kind of replaced Armon Watts when they let Watts go in preseason to kind of save some salary cap room. And I don't think Blacklock is quite the player that Armon Watts was, and he was having some issues and had Taysom Hill had an easy touchdown run. And so all of a sudden, the Saints are in the lead, shockingly, 22-19. But then the Vikings were able to answer with some help from the officials and some flags and some penalties. And that Saints team, very undisciplined this game. But before we get into that final drive, let's do a little salute to our friends at Buick GMC. It's time to visit your select Minnesota GMC dealers and hit the turf in a truck that's designed to tackle the toughest proving grounds. That's the GMC Sierra SLE. It's bold, precise, and capable. Sierra comes standard with a 2.7-liter turbo high-output engine delivering 310 horsepower and 430 pound-feet of torque. Or call winning play with an available 3.0-liter Duramax turbo diesel engine with a 10-speed automatic transmission. And when it comes to comfort and refinement, climb in and discover the convenience of the standard 3.4-inch diagonal center touchscreen. And don't forget, Sierra is truly the MVP with the world's first available 6-function multi-pro tailgate. It's time to step up to professional grade and test drive a new GMC Sierra SLE today. Available now at your select Minnesota GMC dealers or online at TwinCitiesBuickGMC.com. So back to that final big drive for the Vikings, and helped by a 41-yard pass interference penalty on Marcus Lattimore, got in the face of Adam Thielen, and again sets up the Vikings inside the 5-yard line for Justin Jefferson, his first rushing touchdown in the NFL.
Jefferson on the end around, and he will walk in for the go-ahead touchdown.
Well, watch this fly sweep. Boom. Kirk's just going to hand it, time up this motion perfectly. Boom, hand it. They don't even have to block the end.
And that's when the game got even crazier
Yes.
and more wild. At that point, the Vikings were up 25-22. The Saints drive down the field and are able to set up Will Lutz for a 60-yard field goal, which he knocks through, 25-25 at that point in the game. And now we're in the final 4 minutes of the ball game. The Vikings have the ball, and a huge play from Kirk Cousins to Justin Jefferson. Jefferson beats Marcus Lattimore on a 39-yard fade route, beating the blitz, and Cousins makes a perfect throw, up and down day for Kirk, but that was a great throw at the end of the ball game, similar to last week when he makes the great throw to KJ Osborne to beat the Lions. And so now, all of a sudden, we're in a situation, 28-25, as that sets up the 47-yard field goal by Greg Joseph.
Good snap. Good hold. The kick by Joseph. It is good. And the Vikings take the lead with 24 seconds to play.
But it's not over yet.
Oh, no, it is not.
No, it is not, because Andy Dalton hits Chris Olave, unbelievably gets open for a 34-yard gain. I talked about Cam Bynum before. He's got to be more aggressive in this situation, get at the ball, and he lets Olave catch the ball in front of him. And all of a sudden, they're lined up for a potential kick by Will Lutz to send the game to overtime.
To nail this sucker.
Good snap. Good hold. Lutz's kick on the way. And it is off the upright.
Double doink.
Double doink. You got to love it when it's not your team.
That's exactly right. A double doink, and the Vikings escape with the 28-25 victory over the Saints. As I said, good news, 3-1, leading the NFC North, heading into the game this week with the Bears. It'll be kind of a difficult adjustment coming back from London. They don't have a bye week this week that they've had on their other London trips, so that'll be a challenge for the coaching staff to get the game plan put together, get the players ready, and that they can adjust and get ready to face the Bear team that lost yesterday to the Giants 20-12, gave up a ton of yards on the ground. And I think coming out of this game, one of the more disappointing things to me, AJ, was not being able to run the ball very effectively against the Saints' run defense that came into the game ranked 26th in the NFL, and the Vikings only get 81 yards rushing, a 3.2-yard average. Dalvin Cook, 20 carries, 76 yards with that banged-up shoulder, a courageous performance by him, but they've got to be able to run the ball better. The offensive line's got to be a little more dominant in run blocking and in pass protection. Cousins took a lot of hits, had a lot of pressure on him, but as we said, delivered down the stretch. So I think at this point, let's hear a little bit from the head coach, Kevin O'Connell, and his reaction to the game.
Really proud of our team for once again, really back-to-back weeks showing, different types of resiliency to rely on one another. And obviously there's a lot we could do better, a lot more consistent play, capitalizing on some opportunities offensively, and continuing to grow and progress and play as good as we can on the defensive side. But special teams, once again, huge for us. Greg Joseph with the 5 for 5 field goals. Ryan Wright, two punts inside the 20, and the fake punt for his first career completion. Just really, really solid performance by our teams again.
I think in general, the coach is obviously happy to get the win, but he knows that they have a lot to clean up and get better as they go through the season. The Bears this week should be a relatively easy win, but nothing's easy, it seems, in the NFL. And for this particular Vikings team, even though they're winning, which is good. And so I think that's going to be the challenge. A couple of things they have to do. They got to get the run game going. They got to get the pass rush going. Didn't get enough pressure on Dalton. Really, the second straight week, they didn't put enough pressure on a quarterback that's not very mobile. Now they're going to face Justin Fields this week, much more mobile quarterback for Chicago. And as we said, I think there's still been some drops. Johnny Munt had a huge drop on 3rd and 1 that killed the drive, and again, forcing a field goal. They got to catch the ball. And again, just in general, clean up some of the things that have been difficult. The special teams continue to play well. That will be very helpful. obviously, and Kirk Cousins, if he can kind of smooth out some of that inconsistency that he's had this year. But so let's hear from Kirk and his reaction to the game.
As far as the game, obviously huge to get a win. Just a typical NFL game, back and forth. But what was atypical was, playing it here, and it was just a tremendous environment in this stadium. First time playing here in this stadium was just tremendous. Great facility. It's just a great experience all the way around. The hotel we stayed at, the practice we had on Friday, just a really, really positive experience. So I thought our staff did a great job getting us ready and helping us transition and be ready for kickoff. And so it's great to leave here with a win. And a lot of people put a lot of work into this week to make sure we were at our best. But as far as the game itself, we don't want to kick 5 field goals. We want to score touchdowns, and I think that more success in the red zone would have enabled us to, pull away a little bit. So that was a disappointment. The field position all game I thought was really favorable, which says a lot about our special teams and our defense, getting stops and getting us the ball in shorter fields. So there's just a lot to clean up still. Similar to coming after the Lions game with a win. You feel great about the win, but you also feel like there's a lot that you leave out there, and we've got to get better. I've got to get better. So that's kind of where our focus is. But it's tremendous to be 3-1 and to leave here with a win.
And as we said, I think Kirk knows he had a couple throws that he left out there. Particular missed Justin Jefferson on one of the drives when he threw a check down to Adam Thielen, and Jefferson's running wide open in the right corner of the end zone. And threw behind Jefferson on another play where he was open for a possible touchdown, but he did have a blitzer in his face on that particular play. I think the thing that bothered me as much as anything about Kirk's performance was when he took that delay of game down at the 3-yard line after the long play to Jefferson. You just can't do that as a veteran quarterback in this league and set your team back when you're inside the 5-yard line. So those are some of the things that need to be cleaned up. It is still relatively early in the year. But again, those are the things that are going to get you beat eventually down the stretch. And talking about Jefferson, again, a big bounce back game for him, really important. Had great support from Adam Thielen in this game. Adam had 8 catches for 72 yards. Of course, Justin with the 10 for 147. Also had a drop in this game. And again, he needs to clean up some of those things too. And have we got any sound from Justin?
Yeah, we sure do.
Okay.
This is him post-game after the win.
I feel great. The second and third week got a little bit more double teams and triple teams. This week, Lattimore pretty much followed me the whole game. Pretty much was a one-on-one battle majority of the game. So, I keep saying it. We definitely feel confident in our guys to win those one-on-one battles. If I don't get double team and triple team, I definitely feel confident in my game to get open and give Kirk an open eye to throw me a ball.
Again, let's talk about our friends, the Minnesota GMC dealers. It's time to visit your select Minnesota GMC dealers and hit the turf in a truck that's designed to tackle the toughest proving grounds. That's the GMC Sierra SLE. It's bold, precise, and capable. Sierra comes standard with a 2.7-liter turbo high-output engine delivering 310 horsepower and 430 pound-feet of torque. Or call a winning play with an available 3.0-liter Duramax turbo diesel engine with 10-speed automatic transmission. And when it comes to comfort and refinement, climb in and discover the convenience of the standard 13.4-inch diagonal center touchscreen. And don't forget, Sierra is truly the MVP with the world's first available 6-function multi-pro tailgate. It's time to step up to professional grade and test drive a new Sierra SLE today. Available now at your select Minnesota GMC dealers or online at TwinCitiesBuickGMC.com. Now let's go quickly around the NFL, talk about some of the big games yesterday. Probably the biggest game of the day from the Vikings standpoint, the Packers. Crazy league this year. There was only one game yesterday, AJ, where there was a team favored by more than a touchdown. That was the Packers by 10.5 over New England, and they end up going to overtime to beat the Patriots, who are playing their third-string quarterback in the game. And so a crazy win for Green Bay. But again, they're happy to be 3-1 after they lost their opener here in Minnesota. The Bills come back from a 20-3 deficit to beat Baltimore in Baltimore with basically the two top MVP candidates and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson going at it. And although Patrick Mahomes may have something to say about that eventually here this season, and he led the Chiefs to a 41-31 Sunday night win over the Buccaneers in a terrific performance for him. We mentioned the Bears. The Bears coming up this Sunday gave up 262 yards rushing to the New York Giants. Saquon Barkley had 146 yards on 31 carries. So this could be the week Dalvin Cook can break out, and Alexander Mattison. I'm sure the Vikings are going to be studying that very carefully, trying to figure out how they can score more points, control the ball, which they did early in the ball game yesterday. The Bears make a lot of mistakes. They're a young team. Justin Fields will throw up some interceptions as he did last year in the finale here. And again, an important divisional game. The Vikings have the edge in the NFC North so far with that 2-0 record, having beaten Green Bay and Detroit. And now they need to win a game at home against Chicago. So coming up this Sunday. And again, I think as we look ahead to next week and moving forward, the Vikings need to clean up some of the mistakes they're making, convert those turnovers into touchdowns, not field goals. And that'll be the point of emphasis this week as they get ready for the Chicago Bears to come to town. And as we said, this has been our first of many weeks this year, every Monday, 6 to 6:30 p.m. on 1500 ESPN, and available on YouTube via the links from 1500 ESPN and Score North websites.
And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to leave us a like and subscribe on the video. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Every Monday evening, these shows will be up. I'll make sure to get that as soon as we get these posted and recorded, and you can watch it whenever you want to.
Absolutely, and join us again next Monday for Jeff Diamond's Purple Report, brought to you by your Select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers. Thanks for joining us.